Today, we have Pat Boera joining us, which I'm very, very excited about, and presenting about essential job search materials makeover. If you go to the next slide. So just a very quick rundown of what we're going to be doing in the next hour. I'm going through a quick introduction right now, and then I will be handing it over to Pat to run through the bulk of the presentation. We're touching on a lot of components here. I got a peek at the deck, and I think it's going to be some really great content for anyone, really at any stage of your career journey. There's always room to touch up those job search materials, your LinkedIn, your resume. Things are always changing in the virtual world, approaching different styles of interviews. So I'm really excited about that. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. Chat is not possible in the webinar feature, but we have a Q&A box. I encourage you to use the Q&A box as you would with the chat. If you have a question or a comment, if something is really resonating, just drop it in there. And for any questions that we don't get to during the presentation, we will have Q&A at the end to get to those then. And then finally, a little intro on Pat Boera. I wouldn't be surprised if you all know who Pat Boera is. I think her reputation precedes her. With 3+ decades working at Champlain, Pat Boera has supported thousands of students and alumni in their career goals. It is something that Pat finds very rewarding and which you could see in the fact that they've been at Champlain for 3+ decades. I'm really excited to have Pat here. When I was at Champlain, I was in CCM, so Pat Boera wasn't even my direct career coach, but I knew who Pat Boera was. Everyone knows who Pat Boera is. I think she just plays such a pivotal, important role in providing so much value in professional development, career services, and truly just student support at Champlain from what I've seen and experienced. And so I'm really thrilled to have Pat joining us today. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Pat to take it away.
Thank you, Bree. You make me feel like a celebrity. So nice to be here with everybody today. You know, with the weather changing, I know I'm in the mood to clean things out, whether it's the files in my office that are just stuffed with papers that have been there forever, or things that have piled up around the house that need to be sorted and distributed elsewhere. It's that itchy feeling in the spring when you want to just make everything fresh and new. So I thought it might be very appropriate to talk about some of the materials that are part of our job search toolkit in this Lunch and Learn. So I was really honored when Bree invited me to participate. If you have questions anywhere along the way, you know, please don't be shy about asking them. And if I know the content is going to be addressed before the end of the webinar, I will just take notes. I'm a big note taker. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing, taking notes. And we will address it at the end, or you can just hold your questions till the end. And I'd like to start with a little audience survey, since right now I'm just looking into my little webcam and I have no idea who's out there listening. So let's start with question 1 so that I get to know my audience a little bit. Are you a member of the faculty or staff listening in to support a peer? I know at least one of my colleagues is tuning in today. An alum tuning in to learn something new, a recent grad, maybe actively on the hunt for a job, a career changer, or with all that's happening in the world, a job seeker who has been impacted by layoffs, either a company here in Vermont or somewhere else in the US or even somewhere else in the world. And maybe Bree, you can monitor that for me and let me know sort of what my audience mix is. So we'll give that a few seconds.
Yeah, and feel free to drop those in the Q&A box.
I've given you a few seconds. I'm going to move on to question 2, which you can also put responses in the Q&A box. And that is, what are the top 2 things you hope to learn about today? So you probably didn't expect that this many topics would be covered, sort of like your crash course on all things career, but we will talk very briefly about resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, interviewing, networking, and the job search. So given that array, what interests you most?
Looks like we have a lot of alum and a few staff members tuning in.
Okay.
And some folks are mentioning current job seeker or looking to learn something new with their resume presentation.
Okay. And then how about the topics?
See, resume and LinkedIn, resume and interviewing, resume. Seen a lot of overlaps here.
Okay. Well, I think there'll be something for everybody, so we will get going. So one of the things that I really encourage students and alumni and anybody who's looking for a job to do is think about all of the elements that are part of their career and job search toolkit. So immediately what comes to mind is a resume, but there are so many other factors that job seekers need to consider. One, a resume that passes ATS, applicant tracking systems. We'll address that today. Although many people hate writing cover letters, and I hear that over and over again, particularly from some of my current advisees, having the ability to accompany your resume with a compelling cover letter can really tip the scales in your favor frequently. LinkedIn is such a powerful tool for networking. It is an international tool. We have job seekers who are looking, all over the country and all over the world. So you want to be on that platform. We'll address that. Interviewing has become a lot more complicated. It used to be sort of in the olden days, people would sit across from somebody one-on-one or one with a panel and have that in-person experience. And now, of course, so many interviews are being conducted virtually and even using automated tools that I want to address some things to help you succeed in that area. Certainly, job search resources, they change and grow with time. And I want you to be aware of some that we recommend and that we find especially helpful. And then I think maybe even the most important thing on the list is keeping up spirits during the search. Job searches do not happen instantaneously. It's a rare instance when somebody sees a job, applies for a job, interviews, and then gets an offer within a month's time. Often it can take 6 months or longer, depending on the opportunity you're going after and how competitive the industry is. So I think this is so important. And when the going gets tough, what do we do to keep ourselves upbeat, positive about the search, and just prepared mentally and physically? So we're going to start with resume because almost every job you apply for these days, as a foundation element of what they ask for, it's your resume. And I try to make it a best practice to look at my resume at least once annually to keep it up to date, because you never know when some sort of amazing opportunity is going to drop in your lap. And you don't want to be scrambling and rushing to do an update when it could be something that you just do on a regular basis. We all have medical appointments and, those dental cleanings that we do regularly. Well, sort of put your resume in that category as something you should do regularly. So I want to talk a little bit about some tips and what matters. The essence of this day is that any one of these topics on the list could take an entire hour-long workshop. And indeed, we offer those to students here on campus. We go into classes, we do standalone workshops. And so I've tried to just grab the nuggets for each of these topics, not give you the deep dive. Probably the most important thing that our advisees, whether they're current students or alum who have graduated a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, hear from us is, please stay away from templates. So there are all kinds of amazing templates that you can find out there in the Microsoft world, in Google. A lot of people use Canva. Some people use the Adobe Creative Suite to make things pretty. But these days, so many organizations are using applicant tracking systems, which we'll talk about momentarily. So you want to stay away from templates. Use Microsoft Word, use Google Docs. You can make something look really nice on those platforms. Some people have told me they come up with 2 resumes, one that they use for getting through applicant tracking systems, one that they use when they go to an interview in person, which might be created using a tool like Canva or Adobe or something like that. But please, please make a promise on this 20th day of March, 2025, no templates. Employ a standard naming protocol, and you might not think this makes a difference, but I can't tell you how many resumes are sent to me by folks who want some feedback that are just called resume.docx or document one or my document or my resume with no indication of who that my is. So make it a best practice to name your documents that include your first and last name. So Pat Boera resume.docx. A resume is like a piece of real estate, and you want to have some nice open space on that piece of real estate, and then you want your home as the anchor. So balanced margins that include some white space, don't go to like 0.1 all around where every inch of that is covered, because when you send it to somebody, if they don't have the same default settings on their printer, you may cut off some essential information about yourself. So nice balanced margins. You don't have to go with the default, which is often 1 inch all around. You could go 0.75. You could even go to 0.5 or 0.6, but have it balanced. The thing that I hear most from job seekers is, oh, do I have to create a different resume for every job that I want to apply to? No, you don't have to, but is it recommended that you adjust it a little bit to align best with the job you're applying to? Yes. What that might mean is looking at the skills that are required for that job and making sure some of those skills, if you possess them, are mentioned in the skills or qualifications section. If you are applying for multiple positions in an organization and some of your education or experience aligns particularly well with those positions, making sure that information is front and center on the resume in a relevant section. So it may just mean moving sections around or moving skills around, but taking that extra time to align it with the needs of the organization will make a difference in the attention it gets when the reader looks at it. Use a standard font. So I have a funny story around fonts in that years ago, I was working with a student who had a particular look they wanted on their resume. And the font that they selected was called Symbol. And in their version that they had on their computer, it was very much like a Times or a Calibri. But when the student sent it to me, it literally translated every bit of text on that resume to a symbol. So it had little tilde signs and little boxes and little bullets. And I wrote to them and I said, did you intend to send me something that had all of these symbols on it? And they said, no, my font name is Symbol, but it didn't show up that way. So stick with something standard that most employers will have on their desktop. So Times, Cambria, Calibri, Arial are all pretty safe bets for you. If you are somebody who has an active and up-to-date LinkedIn profile, update your header to include the custom URL for your LinkedIn profile. We'll be talking about the custom URL a little later, but particularly for anybody who has a lot of experience and you might feel guilty about having to cut off some of it to keep your resume to one page, putting the LinkedIn URL on there lets people know of a place that they can go to get more information about you. I often get the question, do I put my education first or my experience first? Well, the general rule is if you are a current student, if you are a recent grad, your education is going to be one of the big selling points. So you put it ahead of experience. And if you've been out in the work world for a few years, the experience that you've accumulated is going to take higher priority than your education. So one of those things you can swap around over time. Describe jobs using action verbs and descriptive adjectives. We all get into a routine of using same old words. So mix it up a bit. Rather than saying, I did something, could you use created, developed, facilitated, hosted, managed, much more dynamic verbs? Use descriptive adjectives. Include metrics whenever possible. So a former professor in the Stiller School of Business who now teaches in the Champlain online programs, Dr. Elaine Young, is a big proponent of including metrics because they make your experience come to life for somebody who is reviewing your resume. Let AI and Google enhance your efforts. And we'll talk a little bit. I'm going to show you an example of that when we get a little further in the presentation. So as we know, AI is a big topic these days, and some people are very fearful about it and think it's going to replace all the jobs in the world. And, in the higher ed arena, there's a lot of talk about, well, is it making students sort of take the easy way out to write a paper and so forth. So there's a lot of discussion around AI these days. But I like to encourage people to use it as a tool that can be a foundational tool and an efficiency tool, but then take what it gives you and make it your own. Unless it's otherwise specified, submit your resume as a PDF. This allows it to hold the formatting as you've created it, and most employers will appreciate it in that format. And then super important, use the features like spell check and grammar check that are already embedded in your software, but nothing beats printing it out and reading it out loud because our eyes play tricks on us. And sometimes reading it out loud, you catch those things that your eyes skip over. So it's one of my favorite things to do when I get a student who sits in my office and they think they're all ready to go. I said, let's print it out and read it over. And inevitably, we catch one or two things that slip by both of us. So make that a best practice. Some of the templates we've talked about, you've all seen them, the ones with the big picture on them, the ones with the name that's like in 100-point font, or it has, those little open quotations or bars along the side. No, 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 just take these out of the mix. Instead, here are a couple of examples, and I can certainly provide these to Bree to make access available to you if you're on this call. So for a new grad, we strongly advocate keeping your resume to one page, right? There's information about high school that shouldn't be on there. Even if you were involved in a million different things in high school, take the high school information off, really focus on the college experience and the internships, the volunteer opportunities, the leadership, the skills you've learned through your major, and make it one page. When you're an experienced candidate and you've accumulated lots of different opportunities in your life, 2 pages is absolutely acceptable, but make them 2 balanced pages. So you'll see in this example, pretty even top and bottom, left and right margins, good organization. There's identification on the second page. So anytime you spill over to a second page, make sure your name is on there somewhere. You don't need to replicate the entire heading, but make sure your name and page 2 so that folks know there's more great information about you that they can learn. You'll notice in this example, experience is at the end because typically an experienced candidate has been out in the work world for a couple of years. So what they've accumulated working with different for-profit and not-profit organizations takes priority over their education. Applicant tracking systems. We hear this all the time, either said in full or by the handle ATS. And it's so important that you're aware of this right now because particularly large organizations are using ATS to help manage the volume of activity that they're getting as far as applications. So once again, the request for no templates. Simple, clean format. AI is reading these, right? It's not a human being doing the first pass review, and you want to get past this first pass review. So no templates, Stick with those standard fonts. You don't want that mishap of my symbol story. No fancy graphics. Keep those for something that you might bring in person to the interview. This is pretty tough. No columns or tables because of the way the ATS systems read the document. Columns and tables confuse them. Stick with standard section headings: education, work experience, volunteer experience, leadership, interests. Don't try to create something so fancy that ATS doesn't understand what it's reading. Include relevant keywords. So sort of mine the job description for the things that the employers are looking for and try to mimic those words in your resume. So if they're looking for somebody who has some software savvy, but they want them to know C++ or Java or something like that, use C++, Java, something that the ATS is going to pick up on and match. Tailor your resume for each job. So again, this is studying the job description and thinking about what are the words that are matching that the ATS is going to pick up on. Use standard job titles. So you might have an inclination to be a little bit creative in your job title, but ATS is looking for the standard. So, rather than peanut butter and jelly, just give it peanut butter. Submit your resume in a docx or PDF format unless otherwise specified for the ATS. Really be thoughtful about acronyms. Most of us know what a CPA is. You would think ATS would know what a CPA is, but it wants to see certified public accountant and also CPA. Here in higher ed, we use acronyms all the time, and I have to constantly remind students and alumni that because they know what they're talking about, and because I do, being in this higher ed cosmos called Champlain College, doesn't mean that every place they apply is going to understand those acronyms. So they might say LCDI for the Leahy Center, write out Leahy Center for Digital Investigation, and don't assume that people know the acronyms. Focus on your hard skills. Again, this is something that is going to get you through the ATS and hopefully eventually be invited to an interview. Don't use headers and footers. I had a student sitting in my office the other day and they sent me a document and I said, this document just starts with your skills. Where's your name and contact information? And they said, oh, it's in the header. And it wasn't showing up when they sent it. So don't include a header, even though it might be easy for you to do that. And you think, oh, if I have a multiple page document, it'll just replicate it. Put that information from your header into the main body of the text. Use bullet points for clarity. So sometimes dense paragraphs can be really challenging to read. So use bullet points. It makes it very easy for the applicant tracking system as well as human beings to follow. Avoid jargon. We all get hung up in that, again, just based on our day-to-day conversations, but stick with clear, concise language. And something that I became aware of recently is spell out numbers except dates. So even though it might be easier to write the number 18, if you supervised 18 people, write EIGHTEEN. With regard to dates, ATS also likes the months written out, not abbreviated. So, March 20, or March 2025, not 03/25. Again, we want to do everything possible to get past that barrier called ATS and get in the hands of a human being to look at our application materials. Compelling cover letters. Oh, the cover letter. I hear so often, I'm not a good writer. It takes too long. Do I really need to do this? Can't I just submit my resume? Yes, you can absolutely just submit your resume. Nobody's twisting your arm here. But cover letter allows somebody to tell the story of why. And you can't tell the story of why in a resume. Brand it similar to your resume. So your resume has a header. Most cover letters start with a header. Make it match. It has a cohesive branded look. And I'm going to show you an example. Use standard naming protocol. Just make this a practice across your document. So if it was me, Pat Boera cover letter dash beta, or whatever organization I'm applying to. Address the letter to a specific person, ideally the hiring manager. I hear from students all the time, oh, that information isn't listed in the job posting, so I'm just going to send it to hiring manager. Can you do that? Yes. Does it show your industriousness and the fact that you will go the extra mile to find an appropriate name? Why not do that? You can go to LinkedIn and do a little search, go to the company website, look at the people who come up as employees, find somebody who's the human resources manager or the talent acquisition manager or the department manager. Go to their website. Most websites will have a company directory, or at a minimum, they'll have their leadership team highlighted. It shows you went the extra mile. State the position for and how you learned about it. Organizations want to know that they're getting a return on their investment. If they're paying $600 for a year's subscription to post in Indeed, they want to know that people are finding their opportunity on Indeed or on LinkedIn or on Handshake. Referrals are priceless. So if you learned about the opportunity from a human being in your network and you have permission to include their name, include it, because that can open doors. When I think of times I've been on search committees here at Champlain and somebody has referred a candidate and that referral is mentioned in the opening paragraph of a cover letter, you can bet that that search committee is going to pay extra attention. One, because it's respectful to their own colleagues, and two, because they know their colleagues only going to recommend people of the highest caliber, because we want to keep wonderful people working here at Champlain. Explain why you're interested in the position and the organization. There is no place on your resume to do that type of explanation, which is why a cover letter can be so powerful. Again, include a connection between the organization's needs and your talents. It shows you've taken the time to really study the job description, address what their needs are, and figure out where that connection is. Again, in Elaine Young's words, don't be shy about including metrics and accomplishments. And if you don't want to come out and say, I did this or I achieved this, sometimes reframing it in the way somebody else would talk about you. You know, my supervisors consistently compliment me about, or over the 4 years I was at Champlain, my professors, encouraged me because of X, Y, and Z that I consistently demonstrated in their classes. So sometimes reframing it in terms of what other people say about you is helpful. Always wrap up with a call to action. So I look forward to having an interview with your team where we can discuss my qualifications further or use much more comfortable words for you. And then leave them with a really positive feeling that you're really enthusiastic about that opportunity. So some sort of wonderful wrap-up line that lets them know you can't wait to meet with them and learn more. So I talked about that branded look. So in this example, I have a cover letter on the left and that new grad resume on the right, and you can see that the headers match. So it looks like everything belongs together. So not only headers, but the font you choose for the text and the body of the cover letter.
I have a
All right. Oh, go ahead.
few quick questions in chat. One of them is more straightforward. For ATS scanners, if you're writing metrics, do you need to write the metrics, like write out the number for the
So
ATS scanner, or can you type the number?
in this case, if you're talking about I improved something 75%, you can use the 75%, or you can write out the word 70 hyphen the word 5 and percent.
Got it. And then the other question is, if you give a quick rundown on functional resume versus chronological resume.
May I save that till the end only because we have a
Of
lot still
course.
to go through, or I'd also be happy to address that individually with the person who's listening, because
Of
that could
course.
get really complicated.
I know there's a lot there. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, we're moving on to LinkedIn. There is like a 3-minute video that I often use in LinkedIn workshops here on campus. And a phrase that is so fun is LinkedIn is your resume that never sleeps. So because it is a global tool, there could be somebody in Dublin, Ireland, where a lot of our grads want to return after they've done a semester. They want to go there and live permanently after graduation. And so there could be somebody, in a different time zone who's conducting a search who lands on your profile. Well, you're sound asleep here in Vermont. Couple of things that I recommend. There's a relatively new feature of LinkedIn called verification, and it takes a few minutes. There are a few steps involved, but because so many platforms are experiencing the bot factor, where people are trying to create accounts and they're not really human, LinkedIn, like other social media platforms, is going to verification. So do take the time to do that, and I'll show you how that shows up on the profile. Super important to claim your custom URL. So when you create a LinkedIn profile, it gives you your own little web address, which appears at the top, which is your first name hyphen, your last name hyphen, a random string of letters and numbers. And your goal is to claim your name without that random string of letters and numbers. It takes all of 5 seconds to do, not even that. But it says to the person who lands on your profile, you're a savvy user of LinkedIn. And then you can take that custom URL and put it on your resume, put it in your email signature, put it on a business card if you're still printing cards. But you don't want those random letters and numbers. Upload a current photo, shoulders up, not something where we see a phantom arm around your shoulder or the side of somebody's head, that's been cropped out. And then select a wallpaper that helps tell your story. When you create a LinkedIn profile, the wallpaper is like a multi-panel blue-gray area that appears behind your photo, and it's a nothing. It doesn't help you at all. So if there is an image that represents your industry, your interest area, an interesting place where you studied or traveled, put that there because it's a conversation starter. Craft an attention-getting headline and an about section, and this is where you're going to find that maybe GPT can be really helpful to you. Think back to the resume guidelines I shared as far as the content of the different sections of LinkedIn, so I won't review it here, just in the interest of time. If you have a LinkedIn profile, your goal is to get people to visit the profile and view the profile. And one of the ways you do that is by posting occasionally. You don't have to post every day. You don't have to post every hour. If you did a monthly post or a post every few weeks that addresses some exciting thing you're doing. Maybe you just landed a new job. Maybe you got a promotion at your existing job. Maybe you earned a new certification. Maybe you attended a conference. Those are all really good reasons to post. So think about things like that to drive traffic to your profile. One of the nice things about LinkedIn, which you can't really do on your resume, is link to other media. So if there is any presentation you've given, you could include a link to the presentation. You could include a PDF of some document you've developed, maybe you created a flyer for an upcoming event. Maybe you have a whole website that you developed for somebody, and you can link to those on LinkedIn, which is great. When you're connecting with people, and that's one of the goals of LinkedIn, connecting with other people, always make it a best practice to add a personal note. You can go the easy route and just hit the blue connect button and let that message fly with a default that LinkedIn comes up with, but you're going to get a much better response if you include a personal note. You only have about 300 characters to work with, so you're not writing a book, but it allows people to know the context for the request and just says, I've taken this extra few minutes to make it personal for you, the person I'm trying to connect with. And then while you're in LinkedIn, if you're not already a member, please ask to join Champlain Connect. So Champlain Connect is the college's LinkedIn group for students, alumni, faculty, staff, employers, leadership team, friends of the college. We welcome you, and we hope that when you're on the platform, you'll use it as a wonderful way to connect with others. Recently, I've encouraged some of our students who are graduating or who might be undergraduates, but returning to either their home state or someplace that they're going to be this summer that isn't their home state. They're looking for opportunities. And I said, put it out there to the LinkedIn group called Champlain Connect and let the group help you and support you as you're looking for opportunities. So if you see those posts from students, please respond and help those students find opportunities in your area and join the group yourself. Here are just a couple of visuals about the things that I mentioned. So in the example far left is what you normally get when you create a LinkedIn profile, first dot last, with a whole string of random letters and numbers, and then what it looks like after you've claimed your name. And if you go to hit save and it doesn't let you save it, it just means there's somebody else out there on LinkedIn with your name who's beat you to it. So put in your middle initial, your middle name, or maybe the two-letter abbreviation for the state that you call home at the end, but get it to be customized and not with that random string of numbers. On Dr. Young's little screenshot that I included here is the little shield with the verification check. You can see the example of where you can add a note to customize your invitations. And then both Dr. Young and Kaylee Sullivan, who are colleagues here at Champlain, I thought had nice wallpaper behind their lovely profile photos. Elaine's being a wonderful advertiser for Champlain College, and Kaylee, who's a real outdoor enthusiast, just showing some of the beauty of Vermont and some of the places she likes to visit. I said that AI and ChatGPT can be helpful to you, so here is an actual example. A colleague in another part of campus let me use her About section, which she has an impressive list of things that she's good at. I encouraged her to take that list and use ChatGPT. So my instruction when I opened ChatGPT was take this list and create a compelling LinkedIn About section incorporating the specialties that are listed. And within seconds, you know how quick ChatGPT can be, it came back with what you see on the right side of the page. Now, would I take this and automatically put it into my LinkedIn profile if I was this employee? No, I would read through it and make sure it accurately captured the information that I shared. And then I think to myself, is this language that sounds like me? Or would there be other words or phrases that would be more appropriate to substitute for what ChatGPT provided? So use it as a tool, but don't use it fully to copy and paste, right? Take that, make it your own.
We had a question that came in. Does
Sure.
ChatGPT/AI language on resume and cover letters get discounted by ATS systems? And I think what you just said sort of covers that, but did you have anything else you would add to that?
No, just take the time to personalize it, because I think there's a certain rhythm that ChatGPT gets into that you can tell when something's been wordsmithed by ChatGPT, and that's why it's so important to take the time to personalize it. Same thing here. Here's an example from the same employee who sort of went with the laundry list when they put their description on LinkedIn, and we put it into ChatGPT, and you can see that it highlighted the action verbs. And that's one of the things I want you to look at, focusing on action verbs, but then taking it and personalizing it. Maybe this is too many bullets and you want to combine them, or you want to eliminate them, or rather than saying, I'll use the last bullet as an example, assistant setting up and coordinating workshops and conferences. Maybe you mention some examples of what those are and how many people attended, you know, a annual conference of certified public accountants that drew 1,500 participants is a lot more interesting than just sort of a generic statement about organizing conferences and workshops. We're moving into interview prep, and I'm trying to keep my eye on the time here. So super foundational. Before you go to an interview, think about your values, your interests, and skills, because it's more about just the dollar signs that are the salary that's offered. You want to make sure that the organization you're going to and that you're applying to aligns with your own personal mission and values. Get a job description ahead of time. I'm going to show a ChatGPT example next, because most organizations will focus their questions around the job description. Please research the organization. That's probably the biggest piece of feedback I hear from employers. So-and-so did not do their homework researching the organization before they came to the interview. They would have known X, Y, and Z rather than having to ask about it. Prepare mentally and physically. Get a good night's sleep the night before. Envision yourself being successful in the interview rather than saying, oh, so many people are applying on this job, I'll probably never get it. Review the sample questions. There are all sorts of samples you can find out there. Glassdoor's, top 100 questions, or other sites that offer similar things. Many questions are going to be around your strengths, your weaknesses, customer service, teamwork, problem solving, sort of those foundational elements. So there's no reason not to prepare. Set up a mock interview before the real deal. And here at Champlain, of course, we love doing practice interviews with students. Just within the last week, I did 3 practice interviews with alumni. Love doing that. But if we're not available, or if it just timing-wise doesn't work out, find a trusted friend who will not only go through the practice with you, but give you really frank feedback, because it doesn't do any good if they just say, oh, you were great, without getting into the nitty-gritty of what you could do even better, even if you are great. After you've had the interview, send a thank you email within 24 hours. It used to be we would write, beautiful handwritten thank you letters and put them in envelopes and put a beautiful stamp on it and send it on its way. And people aren't in their offices. Everything is electronic these days. So even more important to get that thank you out there. Alert your references. I got a reference call the other day out of the blue, had no heads up from the person who was in the interview process, and it did not allow me to do my best job talking up their wonderful skills because it caught me so by surprise. So please alert your references. And then if the organization has said, we will let you know next Friday, and next Friday comes and you don't hear, be proactive. Be professional, but be proactive and follow up. Take that extra step. I'm going to do just a really quick ChatGPT live example. You know what? I think I'm not going to do that just in the interest of time. But basically what I did this morning is I found a job on LinkedIn, and it was a very, very lengthy description. And I went to ChatGPT and I said, identify the top 5 to 7 aspects of this job description that I should focus on during my interview. And it came back with a much more manageable list of really the distilled important elements of that job description. So consider doing that if you're getting ready to go on interviews, because it will help you sort of tighten that in rather than trying to be overwhelmed by a very lengthy job description. Many interviews being conducted virtually these days, so a couple of tips. Have a private space that you can use, especially if you maybe have some roommates or even family members or pets. You don't want to have distractions. Use tools like blurring your background or using a virtual background if you are in a space that maybe is multi-purpose, like you have to do the interview in your bedroom and you haven't had a chance to make your bed that morning, or you've got dishes sitting in the sink. Just blur your background if you can't find a private space. Please test your technology. We do that a lot here with students and with alumni, just to make sure that the camera works and the sound works, and everything is in good shape so that you don't have to be distracted by that during the interview. One of the hardest things, maintain eye contact with the camera. don't look down at the screen. That was something that was one of the hardest new habits for me to create when the world shut down after COVID and everything went to virtual. I kept wanting to look at the people's smiling faces on the screen, forgetting really they were on the other side of the camera. Have reference materials handy. You don't know how many times I've been in meetings or interviews where I have a computer monitor that looks like the image that I have on your screen with my little Post-it notes all around. And your interviewer will understand that if you look down occasionally at a notebook, so don't be fearful of that. I met with a student the other day who had been through a HireVue interview, and it really threw them off a little bit. So I wanted to maintain a couple of bullet points about that today, and that is some of the similar things to a virtual interview, but when you have some of these automated interviews where maybe it's an avatar asking the question, or maybe just the question text shows up on a screen rather than a human being, it takes a little getting used to. So most of them have some practice questions. Take advantage of the practice questions. Often they have a time limit. So it will say, for each question, you get 2 minutes to respond. Well, for folks who like to ramble, having that 2-minute limit can be really challenging. So practicing ahead of time and timing yourself can be super important. Speak and focus in a way that makes you feel comfortable. Again, it can be awkward if it's an avatar or just words and not a human being. So if you know that ahead of time, it will help. And then remember to show some energy and excitement, even if it's not a human being is going to be viewing it at some point. So if you think, oh, I'm just talking to an avatar or just talking back to text on a screen, eventually somebody will see that. So include that energy. Networking, super important. The most impressive thing that I heard from a recruiter recently was just networking is your full-time job until you get a job, right? So be a networking ninja before the event, set goals, depending on what sort of the style the event is, prepare your elevator pitch. Those of you who are Champlain alum, you've heard me talk over and over again about our elevator pitch competition, which just happened. So have your elevator pitch ready. Obtain an attendee list ahead of time, because that allows you to sort of set the scene for what to expect, and there might even be specific people you want to connect with while you're at that opportunity during the event. Smile, good eye contact, be approachable, be a good listener. Sometimes you can pick up on things that you'll then want to comment on or ask questions about. Share that elevator pitch, don't be shy about it. Be helpful to other people. So be a resource and connector for other people. Maybe there's somebody who's even more nervous in the room than you are. So help them along the way by maybe bringing them into your circle. And then figure out a way to track your interactions. So some people are still using printed business cards, but I know I went to an event where, we just sort of took our cell phones and did airdrop contacts. Or some people, old fashioned, carry around a notebook, have a pen with you, make a little note about the person, what you spoke about, so that you can follow up afterwards. If you had particularly rich conversations, you might not be able to follow up with everybody, but let's say you had 3 amazing conversations at a networking event, follow up with them, see if they want to get together for coffee. Maybe they're in another part of the state, but you could do a Zoom call or a phone call. Always look for opportunities to network. And for those in the Burlington area, we have a fantastic one coming up soon. And that is the spring networking event that's hosted by a very active club here on campus, Stiller Women in Business. So it's the first week in April, 4:30 to 6:30 at the Morgan Room in Aiken Hall. And the link to register is on the screen. All right, for folks going to get one of those jobs, a sampling of some job search resources that we like and that we use. The 3 on the left, we license here at Champlain: Handshake, Career Shift, and Going Global. Links to Career Shift and Going Global are embedded in Handshake. And even though they are, Career Shift requires its own standalone account. We can send you instructions for that. And then These are some of the others that we are directing people to. The caveat, that asterisk on the screen, USA jobs, with all that is happening on the government level with hiring, I would just be cautious. There are postings in USA jobs right now, but if I was a job hunter, I might be a little nervous about the reliability and longevity of a position I was applying for with the government. Some of the ones on the far right are particularly suited for students who are graduates of the game studio. So Hitmarker, Grackle, Game Dev Map, and CreativeHeads.net are some that we've really found useful. Some job search best practices. Please approach your search with a positive attitude and be aware it's going to take time. It does not happen overnight, even though that might be our wish. Tell everybody in your network when you're looking. The funniest story I can tell you on this is a student who, even after they graduated, said, you know, my grandmother is like my headhunter. She knows everybody and she loves to talk about me, meaning the student or then the graduate. So you never know where those job leads are going to come from. And of course, your family loves you most. So share that you're looking. Always keep your toolkit up to date. Tap all of the resources that are available, which includes folks here at Champlain. I met with somebody from the class of 1992 3 weeks ago. So alumni come back and they tap our resources. That's part of Champlain's promise. We are here for you. Check your favorite job sites weekly because postings change. I can tell you from looking at postings in Handshake every day, we get on average 1,400 new postings in Handshake. Now, these are across many industries, across many states, but that's the type of activity that's happening in Handshake these days. I love the Muse. I get an email newsletter from the Muse every single day in my inbox, and I look at it every single day. And I recommend that you subscribe to it. It's free, fantastic. Persevere. When good news happens, share it and celebrate in a big way, and then pay it forward. So if people have helped you along the way, when you get a request for help, maybe a new graduating student reaches out to you, please pay it forward. If you are in that job hunt phase and things are not going along very well, you know, freshening up your skills can be really important. And these are some sites where you can do some online learning for free, like any online tool. Some of them have a trial period where after that trial period, there's a subscription fee, but many things are totally free. So these are some sites that we've come across that you might find interesting. Again, you'll have access to this presentation and you can explore. And then sort of finally, keeping up your spirits during the search. We get overwhelmed, we get discouraged. So setting small goals, not to, I'm going to get a job this week, but maybe I will update my resume this week. Maybe I will add 3 new contacts on LinkedIn. Maybe I'll reach out to my favorite professor to ask if they would be on my reference list. Maybe I'll send 1 thank you note. Celebrate the wins. So getting invited to an interview, getting a yes, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn are wonderful wins. Enjoy them. Maintain a routine. So if you are actively searching, make sure there are touch points on your calendar for to-dos that move your job search forward. Because if they're not on your calendar, other things will take precedence. Oh, it's a nice day outside. I think I'll go outside instead. No, this is when you've designated as your job search time. Lean on your support system, your family members, your friends, your favorite faculty, the career staff here at Champlain. Take care of your mental health. Eat correctly, exercise, do some of the fun things that you love to do, whether it's reading or knitting or, you know, volunteering at an animal shelter. Reframe rejection as maybe, you know, this wasn't the right opportunity for me at the right time, but I learned something from it. What could I do better the next time I go to an interview? Maybe I made a new contact and that's valuable because I can return to that person when another opportunity at that organization opens up. Volunteer or freelance. This will make you feel great. It will help an organization and it'll be something new to put on your resume. Always learn. So tap into some of those free courseware that I shared, and then stay hopeful and be patient. Hard to do, easier said, but so important. And stay connected to us here at Champlain. So I am the career coach for 3 different academic divisions here: Stiller School of Business, School of Social Innovation, formerly known as the EHS division, and the Degree Design Lab. Carrie Shackett is the career coach for our Information Technology and Science division. Sarah Stack supports the Creative Studio, which is the majors of the Communication and Creative Media division, minus the game majors. And then our newest colleague, Connor Holtkamp, who's at the Game Developers Conference with students this week, is the career coach for the Game Studio. And of course, Bree and the rest of the wonderful team in Advancement and Alumni Relations, and your favorite faculty. They love to hear from alumni. All right. I have not left much time for questions.
Yeah, we have a few that I think should be quick hits. One is asking if LinkedIn is still the top choice for applying for jobs, or if job postings are pretty evenly distributed across all other platforms.
I would say they're pretty evenly distributed and people seem to have their favorites. There are people I know who love LinkedIn and people who go, oh no, Indeed is my place, or CareerShift or Handshake. So find a tool that has a lot of listings that seem to align with your interests and use that, but not exclusively.
And we also add, what are some top things you should research about a company before an interview?
Well, you can follow trends and news, see how they engage with their community. I always think that's a really good sign of how a company culture is. Do they give back, whether it's financially or they provide a day that their employees can volunteer? Have they had activity where they've been acquired by another organization, and what is that going to mean for existing employees? Sometimes when there's a company takeover by another company, there are a lot of layoffs and things like that. So pay attention to what's trending in the news would be, I would say, really important. And also look at their mission and their values and identify if they align with your own.
And then this one might require some offline.
Okay.
But the returning to the functional versus chronological resume.
Yep.
Quick elevator pitch version of that.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the chronological resume. I think the functional resume, it's really hard to identify what functions went with which opportunity. And so I think personally it's confusing to do a functional interview, and happy to have an offline chat with that person to go into it in more depth.
Oh, someone mentioned that it could be interesting to look at the annual report of a company before an interview.
Absolutely. Love that idea. Anything else? All right, Bree, I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah. So just appreciate you all coming and joining us today during your lunch break. Really hope you take a moment to fill out the feedback form. It takes just a minute or so, and that just helps us continue to provide sessions that are valuable to you. And we want to hear what you want to learn more about. If there was, this was a rundown in a lot of different areas. If there was a topic in this presentation that you want to do more of a deep dive on, let us know, or anything else. We'd love to hear from that. Other than that, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Pat, for joining us and sharing all of this wonderful information with us today. Very, very helpful for everyone at any level of their career search. So appreciate that, and enjoy the rest of your day and have a good weekend coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree.